The Gentleman's Guide, an Americanized Enchiridion by Will Shower, from my family's smart devices and my own personal meditations. Released onto the internet in 2015, I wrote it so that I wouldn't have to explain a cryptic 18th century translation over and over again. I would quote the translation, and then my conversational partner would say, "What?" And I would say it again in American, and they would understand. Though I consider it to be the height of hubris to release this to the public, maybe it can help some students understand the Stoic point of view a little better. So without further ado. Part 1. Good and Evil, a Pantheist Perspective. An atheist may care about whether something is natural or unnatural. A monotheist might decide if it is good or evil. These can all be considered false dilemmas. For you, the only real separation is between things in your control and things not in your control. So, what are the things in your control? Our opinions are controllable if we're open-minded. Our pursuits and desires can be controlled if we examine ourselves. And our disapproval can be controlled too if we are fearless. If we were to give a one-word summary of what is in our control, perhaps we would call it action. The things that aren't in our control are our bodies, our property, reputations, our job, anything else that isn't our own actions. These can all be handed over to their true masters without them having to pay. Disease, destruction, scandal, and layoffs can happen to even the mightiest people. If you claim ownership over something that isn't yours, even only in your own mind, then you will run into trouble. You'll be upset when the gods or the men who own it take control. But if you claim ownership over things that actually belong to you, and you understand who really owns the other things, then nobody will be able to tell you what to do, and no one will be able to restrain you from your true nature. If you can truly accept what little belongs to you, you will find fault with no one and accuse no one. You will not be able to be hypnotized or advertised to. In truth, you will be invincible, plain and simple. No one will be able to harm you, and you won't have any enemies. I hope that sounds like a worthy goal to have. You don't have to be struck by lightning or have mutated genes to gain this power. You just have to decide what's important. Stop waiting. You'll have to give up on some of your dreams and put others on hold. You can't have both riches and freedom. And if you concentrate on being free, you won't get that much money. But if you concentrate on getting money, then you won't have a shred of freedom. And that means no real happiness. A gentleman is free first, and everything else second. So how do you do this? Every time you encounter something from the outside world, whether that means an impulse from within your own brain or an appearance picked up by your other senses and delivered there, every time something that might disturb you is encountered, be prepared to say, "This is just happening in this brain right now. It isn't really real." Then, examine whether it is in your control or not. If it's something out of your control, you have to have another line prepped and ready for yourself. "This doesn't matter to me." The real you has about half a second to remind your mind of these things before your human brain takes over for you. And your human brain is a physical thing that follows determinism. So stay awake. Part 2. How a Gentleman Thinks About Thinking. Your brain will sometimes send you an impulse to avoid something, or an impulse to obtain something. This impulse consists of two different parts. First, the brain comes to its own decision that it actually can do something about it, and then it sends you the signal. The brain takes in sensory information and then makes promises to your body. If you were taking your dog on a walk and it was convinced that chasing a squirrel into traffic was a good idea, it's only following the brain. You can get that squirrel honest. The raw, instinctive brain of the dog isn't doing anything wrong. The brain sees a small animal and activates stomach hunger to prepare for food and chase memories to prepare for action, delivering them as one to the dog as a promise. If the chase doesn't happen, the hunger lingers and the dog whines at you. The brain will take it as a given that it can chase a squirrel until you train it to follow your leash. The promise that the brain makes you is not the real you. The part of you that it's trying to connive into action is the powerful part. The part of you that takes actions can choose to use its power to pull the leash of your rational thought process rather than being pulled along by it. This has to be the first step when you encounter something that your raw, instinctive brain is attuned to. Your brain naturally hates sickness, death, and poverty, even though they're an unchangeable part of the universe. This helped you when you were an animal, but now that you're a gentleman, you can decide not to react to these things, and instead only react negatively to things that hurt the natural function of your mind. You know this, but the hypnotic nature of society stops you from thinking about it for too long. Society wants you to desire things, while a gentleman should desire nothing. If you desire something outside your control, then you'll be disappointed because you'll never truly own it. And if you're desiring something in your control, what you're actually feeling is disappointment that you don't have it, a negative emotion fed to you by the brain. In the case of your rational thought process, you can pursue something that will improve it, or avoid something that could damage it, but you should do these things gently. Part 3. The Magic of Concepts. Everything that you see belongs to a larger group in your mind. Every time you have something that you like, remind yourself what the broad category you like is. For instance, instead of saying, "I like this mug that I own," you should say to yourself, "I like having a cup to drink from." Then, if that mug breaks, you won't be disturbed. If you hug a pet dog or a child that's more dear than anything else to you, remind yourself that you only embrace the beings you love. That way, if the dog runs away, or the child falls ill and dies, you can hug another being that you love without feeling like the universe has taken something away from you. Part 5. The Magic of Tone. There isn't just the concept of objects in the brain. These objective concepts are surrounded by a cloud of judgments and definitions that allow it to interact with other concepts, just as an atomic nucleus in chemistry depends on the cloud of electrons to create chemical harmony without really interacting with another atom's core. These core concepts have no power over people, but the principles and notions that we form do have the ability to make us disturbed. For instance, we know that all major religious teachers have talked about death as if it were not something to fear, but everyday people have an opinion that it is terrifying. This belief system of death being terrible is actually what hurts someone when they encounter death, not the death itself. Think on this enough, and you'll see that you can structure your own principles in accordance with the real universe if you choose. And therefore, you make the choice to go against nature when you are disturbed or grieved, because you have faulty judgments about things in your brain. If you don't understand this teaching, you'll blame others. When you have these thoughts for the first few times, you'll blame yourself. But once you understand what blame is, you will blame no one, not yourself and not others. Part 4. The magic of priming. Positive visualization is a great form of prayer, but you should also realistically visualize the worst case scenario when you go out to do something. For example, if you go to the gym, you should remind yourself about the jerks that show up at the gym. Some chucklehead will be smoking pot in the locker room after his workout for his DOMs, brah. Or some chump of an athlete will be in the squat rack doing curls, and you just know that one of the employees is stealing. If you actively remember these things before you're at the gym, you won't care when they do happen, because you've planned your reaction to them. You know that no matter what, your reaction to these bad situations will be your pre-planned statement. I didn't just plan to work out. I planned to have a stress-free day, including a workout. I won't accomplish the more important goal if I'm troubled by this little thing. Part 6. A gentleman's opinion of fine things. Don't be proud unless it is of something that belongs to you. If your mother were to tell her friends how proud of herself she was because you did well on a test, wouldn't you be offended? That was your test and your accomplishment. Well, imagine how your car feels when you tell someone that you have a pretty car. The car would be justified if it told me that it were pretty, because, darn it, the prettiness belongs to the car. But when you tell me that you have a nice car, you're proud of someone else's work. So what? What really belongs to you? Not that property, even if you bought it, because someone who stole it could just as easily say that they own a pretty car. But your definition of what makes a car good or bad for you, the reaction that it gets out of you, that's what you own. So if you react to a car with actions befitting its true nature, then you can be proud of that action. Just as a mother could be proud of herself for rewarding you for your achievement, because that's actually something that she did. Part 7. A chat at work. Imagine that you have a video chat open on your little company desktop with your boss, and he stops the meeting to take a break. When he comes back onto the call, your company computer will restart, close all the other programs, and reset to just a video chat window full screen. While he's taking a break, you can minimize it and start playing a game, or open your browser and order takeout to pick up that night, but your attention should always be on the call that's about to come back. So it is with life and death. If instead of idleness or animal satisfaction, you choose to start a chat with a wife or a child, who am I to stop you? But the conversation might end at any moment without warning, and you won't be able to follow up with them on anything until you see them again, because that's just the way computers work. If you're old, you can see why doing something like this isn't a good idea, just in case you can't refocus when the call comes back. The time will soon come that everyone will be cut off from you, except for the boss. Part 8. The Greatest Wish. Don't demand that things happen the way you wish. Wish for things to happen as they do happen naturally, and you will live well. Part 9. The choice you make. Illness doesn't hurt your ability to choose, unless that is your choice. Being paralyzed is a hindrance to the legs, but not to the ability to choose. Say this to yourself about everything that happens, and you will come to realize that such things are obstacles to something else, not to yourself. Part 10. The Game of Life. Everything that happens is an accident until you choose to make it into a meaningful situation. You can use an accident for your own ends, just as if you were playing a game that randomly dealt you enemies for experience. You see a blisteringly attractive man. Now you can train your self-restraint statistic. I ran into a pain challenge. I can increase my maximum fortitude score this way. Someone said a racial term that used to offend my character. If I click the ignore option, I can add to my patience bar. If you make a habit out of this sort of game, linking the good with the situation, you'll be immune to being swept away by things like a herd animal. Instead, you'll be able to stand and face the reality of a situation. Part 11. How would a gentleman treat a taxicab seat? The things you don't control don't belong to you, so you can't lose them. You should say, I returned it. Is your pet dog gone? It is returned. Is your spouse dead? They're given back to what created them, be it loving God or unfeeling earth. Now, your estate is taken away. Then is it not likewise returned? I hear you shouting. Okay, great. My money never really belonged to me in the first place. Great talking point. But now my ex-partner has all my assets, and he's an asshole. That's unjust. Well, why does it matter who gets it once the giver has taken it back? While you have it, you should take care of it, but you shouldn't say that it's yours. Think of it more like how a taxi seat is yours. Part 12. Reasonable thoughts. These are two reasonable thoughts that you should never entertain. If I neglect my affairs, I'll have no income. And if I don't punish my employee, they'll do badly. Just because they seem reasonable doesn't mean you should follow them. It's simple once you think about it in terms of your options. It is morally better to die from hunger but with no grief or fear than to live with plenty of money and constant annoyance. And clearly, it is better for your employees for them to do honestly bad so they can learn than for you to be stressed out from having to punish them. Start with something little. A room isn't open when it's supposed to be, or someone tries to upgrade your browser and ends up deleting all of your documents, or the office supplies and lunches keep going missing. Tell yourself calmly, peace isn't free. This is the price I pay for tranquility, because everything has a price. When you call your employee, maybe they won't answer. Even if they do, they might not do what you want. But if you let that get to you, then you've decided to promote that person above you with the job title Manager of My Happiness. Was that what you wanted? Here's one more reasonable thought that you should try to weed out. I did that badly. That's giving the power of your happiness to your past self, and they didn't know everything that you know. It seems perfectly reasonable, because it seems like we're taking responsibility for ourselves. But in truth, our point of view is always changing. The being who did something badly was doing something against your current will, and they're out of your control. So there's no point in trying to change them, even if they were wearing your body and using your brain at the time. Part 13. Too hot for TV. When you watch children's shows, you'll often get a meaningful moral that what others think of us doesn't matter. Or when we thought we were going to be punished for something, the other party didn't really care in the first place. The way of thinking for a gentleman is more advanced than these morals, and certainly not appropriate for kids' shows. You should be happy at everyone's opinion of you, even if they think you're an idiot or base. Right now, commit yourself to this simple fact. You can be happy, even if you seem really stupid about some things. Right now, commit yourself to the idea that people will think you have mistaken beliefs, and you will still be happy with yourself. In fact, you should be happiest when people think you're a slacker, or a bleeding heart, or a fool. It's easier to do the things you want when people have low expectations of you. Not only that, but it is physically impossible to keep your reasonable nature in full control of yourself when your social nature wants external things to impress people with. Part 14. A Free Man. You are the most unhappy type of thief, and the worst kind of idiot if you want your child to live forever. Because that means you want the power of the gods to be in control of things that don't belong to you. If you want your dog or your stomach to stop whining for table scraps, you're as dumb as a 5-year-old at a magic show. Because what you really want is for animal lust to disappear, or you think you can magically transform it into something else. Isn't it better to concentrate on getting what you wish for, since that is under your control, because thinking about what you wish for is an action? If you want something, someone can take power over you by giving it to you. If you want to avoid something, someone can take power over you by removing it. Go ahead, depend on others. If you like the idea of being a slave, someone will always be trying to convince you that you want something. Someone else will always be telling you that they can help you get rid of something you don't like. Give in to those wishes that they're trying to put in your head, if you want them to be your master. But if you're going to be free, control your lust towards things that don't belong to you. As a more practical piece of advice, when someone is pressuring you into doing drugs or eating bad food, look a little sad and embarrassed and say out loud, "I wish I could resist things like this." Don't say no, just plainly state your real desire to be able to control yourself. Then, see what the reaction of your potential master is. If they say you should stop, then they understand you, and you can ignore the offers they make in the future without seeming rude. If they keep pressuring you, look surprised and say, "Maybe my wish came true. I'm better at resisting this than I thought, sorry." And then stick to it when they get angry. It's better to be passive with someone subconsciously trying to control you, rather than to give in to their desire. Part 15. The Lazy Susan Life. Have you ever been to a Chinese restaurant with one of those dinner table turntables? It's called a Lazy Susan in English. You all order some food and then you share it by moving it around. This is how you should act during life, like you're sitting at a spinning table. Is something facing you? Take some, with moderation. Does it pass by you? Don't mess everything up by stopping it. Is it far away? Don't try to stretch over someone else's plate to get to it, but wait for it to reach you. So what are you trying to take from the universe to put on the plate of your life? A girlfriend? Or a wife, maybe? Maybe you're thinking about dishing some more into your savings account, or getting a good job, or you have questions regarding children. Treat the universe like you're sitting at a turntable, and you'll be worthy to sit anywhere, even at the tables of the gods. And if you can politely decline all of these things, well then, even the gods will be impressed. In fact, people with ascetic attitudes very often are hailed as saints or gods after their death. I'm sure one pops into your mind instantly. I don't have to mention Siddhartha Buddha or St. Francis. These hold the same place in your mind as other powerful divine beings. 16. Someone is complaining. For someone like me, one of the hardest appearances to distance yourself from is someone else complaining. You see someone crying because their little kid died, and it's so sad. Somebody complains to you about how their daughter has barely had 2 words for them since they went to college. That person lost his small business in a storm. Hard to hear. They will inevitably be ranting endlessly about the wicked storm or the cruel abandonment or the unjust death. They take it personally because it happened to them. But as soon as it passes from their mind to yours, make sure that you are ready to say, this person isn't really hurt by the accident. They're hurt by their interpretation of it. Someone who doesn't know them as well as I do wouldn't get worked up about this, so I should make sure not to get worked up about it either. Don't try to talk to the person about how they should react, of course, because that'll just make them more angry. But you should be cautious not to pretend that you care too much and get upset with them, because that means planning your lie and whining on the inside first, and that's just as stressful as whining on the outside. Will you seem cold at first? Yes. You may even be called autistic. But the other person doesn't actually want you to be sad. That would be silly. They just want you to understand the truth of the situation. If you start to lie about how sorry you are, then you might get caught, and your lack of sincerity will be even more obvious. But if you calmly repeat back to them what happened, and what you think preceded, and what you think is likely to follow, you've done your job. That person that you listened to will actually review what happened in their brain later, and the magic of listening will make it seem like you were being empathetic. Everyone else they talk to about their problems will start talking about themselves, and seem even less sincere upon reflection. Remember that this is the choice you're making, and you won't have to lie about how much you care. Part 17. The world is a stage. When you're in a high school drama class, you don't get to pick what part you play. The instructor does. You don't get to choose whether you're the cripple or the governor, or a poor man that looks just like everybody else in the crowd around you. You also don't get to choose how long you're on stage. But no matter what, your job isn't to change your lines, but to act them naturally. Life is your high school play, and you have to play your part well. What character you have is always going to be up to someone else. Part 19. The big parts. You can be unconquerable if you enter into no combat in which it is not in your own control to conquer. That fight may seem very tempting, but if you aren't the one pulling the strings, you have a chance to lose everything. Sometimes you'll see someone who's really lucky. They entered into those kinds of contests and won. And we see those lucky people get money and power, and our brains tell us that they're happy. Brains love money and power. This is a hard instinct to get over. But you have to remember, they really aren't more happy. Those people are just as out of control as the rest of us. These honored people just happen to get lucky in the way they were born or the situation they got hired into. And you will never be able to control the way you were born or who hires you. So these things, as a rule, cannot be good. So don't wish to have power or money, but wish first to be free. And the only way to be free is to understand those things that aren't in our control as they really are. Part 18. The play has foreshadowing. In life, sometimes, you see a bad horoscope. It's Friday the 13th sometimes, or you see a black cat cross your path, or you see a murder of 6 crows. You get some kind of bad fortune, okay? You shouldn't think of this bad luck as coming towards you. Instead, be ready to say, the supernatural world may be able to affect my body, or my property, or even my family, but to me, no matter what happens, I am lucky if I want to be. Because I'm in control of whether this affects me in a good way or an evil way. Part 20. Life Hack. The only thing that hurts you is the way you think. So when I ask you, has someone else harmed you? Then you have to answer no to be a gentleman. If I ask, has someone insulted you? Then you have to understand on a subconscious level that no one can hurt your mind, except for the concepts that exist inside of your mind. I want you to think of an insult kind of like a cyber attack. It gets into your system and looks for your defenses so that it can turn them against you. If you have a really powerful blame pride system, then it latches onto that concept of insulting people is wrong because it hurts their feelings, and it makes that system work for it. You can see now that the software that's the problem isn't the virus. You can't stop viruses from happening. It's the antivirus. Your parents got you a new brain computer when you were born and decided to download the Blame Pride antivirus because it always worked for them. But the antivirus was malware the whole time they were using it, and they just didn't notice. It popped up scary windows that made it look like it was protecting them. But all along, it was just draining their resources and letting all kinds of Trojan horses in. So you go to investigate the program. Once you notice that it drains all your resources, it brings you to a website that tells you it's all your computer's fault. Your operating system, it sure is open to viruses like that, isn't it? But just pay us this one time, and we'll use this updated version of that program to fix everything that went wrong. That's what it's like when you blame yourself for blaming. It won't stop the real problem. It'll just keep connecting you with the program and asking you to pay over and over again. The only way to be invincible is to delete the bad program rather than trying to reason with it. That weaponized blame pride system has too many privileges on your network, so get rid of it before it decides to do something terrible using your hardware. Every time you feel like blaming someone, remember that they can't actually hurt you. If you really can't control your temper, then go ahead and get a little annoyed on the inside, but don't let it affect your judgment until you have some time to yourself to reflect on things. Annoyance is one thing, but if you let it run away with you before you can get some time to yourself, you might find it evolving into a full-blown hatred. Part 21. A Daily Habit. Hic sunt dracones meditation. Do you have any daily habits, like making coffee in the morning or taking a shower at night? One of your daily habits should be negative visualization, where you come to terms with the fact that you will unexpectedly cease to exist someday in the grand mystery we call death. Maybe that's not enough negative visualization to keep you contented. If something like your spouse cheating on you is especially terrible, maybe worse than death to your mind, bring it up to yourself and reason with yourself whether it is in your control or not. Once you accept these terrible things daily, the desire for petty entertainments and the little negative thoughts of your day will start to seem more like things you're doing for someone else, not for your real self. But mainly, when you understand how precious and fragile your own life is, you become more free to do what you truly desire. Part 22. Wow, you're crazy. If you want to be a gentleman, that is, if you want to be a happy person, you have to tell yourself right now that it won't help your social life at first. They'll say, look at this guy, he's an armchair philosopher. Or they'll say, wow, you really think you're a superior being now that you've read a few old books, huh? Now, for your part, don't act arrogant or condescending, but just do your best to keep doing what's right, as if God tapped you on the shoulder and told you specifically to keep your head on straight. If you keep doing the right thing, then in the future, those same people who are calling you a know-it-all will think that you actually know it all. That being said, if you keep changing your mind about what seems best to you, they'll probably be right when they say that being a philosopher makes you act superior. Part 23. Tempted into negativity. You will be tempted away from contemplation by your social nature, because even having a beard can make people assume the worst about you. If you start to turn your attention to external things, however, you've already ruined all of the hard work that you put in up to that moment. So in this moment, consider yourself whole for no other reason than the fact that you are a gentleman. If you want other people to think the same thing, you have to convince yourself first. Part 24. Self-worth. This is kind of an example of a conversation. I'm going to be judged really harshly if I do all that. I'll be a disgrace. No one would ever listen to me if I did something like that. Don't let that affect you. If being judged is evil, then don't consent to your half of the equation. Is it really in your control whether you'll get invited to a party or whether you'll be promoted? Of course not. That's all up to other people. So how is it a bad reflection on you? And as for whether people would listen to you or not, you shouldn't be handing out advice to anyone but your own brain and body, because that's where you can actually stop yourself from being a disgrace. Well, not only that, but at least in your own brain, you're sure to be listened to. Okay, but I won't be able to help my friends if something happens. What do you mean by help? You won't be able to give them money or get them a good job, but money and power doesn't belong to you anyways. If you don't have these things, then how can you even think about giving them away? Then you should try to control money and power to help people, right? You know, help people. You have enough knowledge and good breeding. You could start a business and donate tons to charity. If I can keep my own serenity while controlling a pile of money, then please show me your secret. I've been waiting to meet you for a long time. I'd love to have money that doesn't require anything but honest actions. But if instead you start to tell me that I have to give up peace in order to get money, you have the worst mental accountant in your head possible, because money is out of my control and therefore useless, while peace is in my control, so it's part of who I really am. You want me to give up part of who I really am so that I can get wealth, when even people that have wealth are constantly trying and failing to buy peace. What would you rather see when you look in the mirror? Somebody with a big pile of money, or somebody that honors themselves and their duties? Why don't you try to feel better about yourself, rather than trying to figure out how to get money that's actually more valuable? Maybe it's more valuable, but It doesn't help the economy. I guess you don't really care about what's valuable to the American economy, though, huh? You're right, up to a point. But again, what do you mean by help? If the world depends on people continuing to buy useless things, let other people do it. There's always going to be someone. If the economy depends on people working slavishly at their jobs, let someone else do it. There are more people in this country than ever before. I'm sure that they can handle it. So you have to be producing something to help the economy. Produce an American citizen with a strong sense of honor. If you could create honorable humans in a factory, don't you think someone would pay you to do it? I'm sure they would. Then you just proved that you aren't useless by focusing on that as your craft. You're talking really well. But I guess my real question is, what job should I have to help the country I love? Anything. Anything that you can do while still holding on to your moral senses. A chef, a farmer, anything that makes you happy. But if you lose your honor and your loyalty because you aim too hard for external things, you'll lose your sense of patriotism along with it. When the time comes to choose between your bottom line and your love of your country, you will fail to make the right choice. Why don't you think about how much your country will love you when you've lost your sense of shame in exchange for an income? Part 25. Capitalism, a Pantheist Perspective. So, somebody denied you a favor and gave it to someone else instead. Or maybe they were invited to a consultation and you weren't. So if these things are good, your reaction is sympathetic happiness for the one who got them, right? And if you really believe that it wasn't even good in the first place, then you're not giving it a second thought, right? Remember, you can't just get what other people have because you want it. You have to pay for it. Maybe this particular situation doesn't fit into proper capitalism, but an employee seems more valuable if they know how to compliment and, brown nose somebody as compared to somebody who doesn't do that. So if you don't want to brown nose and be constantly on call for personal problems and all that other crap that you have to deal with to maintain that relationship, you're not honoring the external work that brown noser put in. In our normal capitalism, we might sell someone a bag of vegetables for $1. If you're in line behind someone and you see them get vegetables, do you get mad because they're getting nutrients that you're not? Of course not, because you can still look at the $1 that you saved and understand that it was your choice. So in this case, you weren't invited to that person's dinner party because you didn't pay the price of the meal. Not a capitalist price, but a social one. The dinner is sold in installments over time, payable only with your payable only with your kiss-ass card. Is that price worth it to you? If it is, then start making the payments. But you're some kind of greedy idiot if you think you can just have the vegetables without giving up the $1. So what did you get to keep? The knowledge that you were honest and didn't praise someone who didn't deserve praise. And you also get to choose what kind of night you want to have, rather than being forced to make a memory of somebody that you don't even like. Part 26. Impossible to remember. How do you feel when somebody tells you that their car broke down? You feel bad. Think about what you could do to help with the repair. You tell them that you're sorry, but that's life. So when your own car breaks down, you should tell yourself the same thing. Sorry, but it could have been worse. This rule even applies for really serious things. If you hear that someone else's child died of a disease, you'll be as ready as anyone else to say, it wasn't fair, but so it goes. It could have happened to anyone. But if it happened to us, all of a sudden we'd completely shut down and refuse to accept that it's just a human accident. And you'll probably forget all about the sage advice that you would give someone else in your situation. Part 27. Sin, the classic definition. You don't put up a target with the intention of missing it. In the same way, the nature of evil does not exist in the world. Part 28. Psychotic or recording me. Imagine that you're a genie in a lamp, and whoever rubs it gets to make you their slave. Wouldn't you be embarrassed by that weakness? Wouldn't that make you feel awful? And yet, every time you feel like someone's going to hurt you, even a little bit, you let your mind be completely dominated by them. Now, I'm yelling at you. I get to make you my slave now because I'm more intense. Is that fair? No, of course not. Disregard the people who yell at you. Assume that they're trolls or just ignorant rather than enemies. If you're still struggling to imagine that after a while, assume that they're staging a reality show, or they're someone with a serious mental problem. Otherwise, you will always have this weakness. Part 29. Really old advice. You're thinking about doing something new, and that's normal and great. But before you do it, I want you to clearly visualize the kinds of things that happened before that. Good. Now, I want you to visualize the things that come after it. Great. Now, that wasn't hard, right? It took maybe 15 minutes. You thought of all kinds of negative things that could happen. Right after that, you were thinking of ways that you could overcome that obstacle. I'm glad you took my advice. If you don't visualize what happens before you do something, and what happens after, then the obstacles that pop up will make you want to quit. You'll feel bad about quitting, too. For example, maybe you're going to get really fit and really take care of your health. Now, let's think about it. Eating right is boring. Exercise takes a lot of time. Lifting weights is exhausting. And getting enough sleep can make your social life a nightmare. Not only that, but after you start to get fit, you plateau and start to notice how little you're improving. Maybe you'll fracture your ankle or smash your hand and never be able to run long or lift heavy again. Mostly, though, you'll have to have enough discipline to calm your brain down when it gangs up with your body against your soul and tries to make you drop habits that are proven to be useful. Okay, now, do you want to be athletic? If you still say yes, then go ahead and satisfy your craving. But if you don't take the time to think of these negative things, you will start with a fiery passion and then burn out. Just like a child who wants to be something when he grows up. You'll play pretend. You'll be a rock star or talk in impressions of an important businessman. You'll be like the kids that play at being wrestlers or the ones that act depressed when they see others get attention for it. Just copying behaviors for the same reason any other ape would. Then they get older, and they start to get happy chemicals in their brain for novelty, so they keep on doing novel things for that hit. They're right when they think the next thing is going to make them happy, but only for a little while. Once they have to look at it from all sides, they move on to the next thing. but with their whole selves, they are nothing. Are you doing this? Are you just acting like a fighter? Just acting like a teacher? You're just acting like you follow philosophy because you think it's some magical way of getting what you want. Just monkey see, monkey do. No, I'm really not, you say to me. Good. Then let's think about what getting mentally fit is going to involve. Do you think you can speak with that tone of voice and be a gentleman? That may seem obvious, but you're going to have to change the way you eat, too. You're going to have to change the way you get angry. Being a gentleman is hard work that you put in every day, watching yourself and your appetites, disconnecting from people who aren't good for you. You'll get no sympathy in courts about whose choice a crime was, and I can tell you from experience that both religion and science will be unwilling to listen to the beliefs you develop. You'll lose a lot this way, won't you? Still worth it to be a gentleman? Would you pay the price of how people think of you for how you think of yourself? If so, then make the purchase and gain freedom. If not, then don't be like a little kid and just put on a beard and call yourself a manly man, and then take it off and dress up like a construction worker, and then put on a suit and become a manager. These aren't consistent. Try to be one person, either a good one or a bad one. You have to either concentrate on external things or your own ruling faculties. You understand? Be a philosopher or one of the vulgar. Be a gentleman or a villain. Part 30. Relations and duties. Your boss is supposed to help you do your job, and you're supposed to do everything that they say. But you have a bad boss. Well, you shouldn't believe anyone who promises you a good boss. You don't just get a good boss because you want one. But you do get a boss, because that's the way the world works. Maybe your brother is bad, but you were never entitled to a good brother, just a brother. Having a good brother isn't a part of who you are unless you want it to be, so stop wanting that. Just want to have a brother. Just want a neighbor. Once you want those things, you'll know what your duties towards them are, just from contemplating what you really desire from that kind of relationship. Part 31. Why not atheism? Is the universe guided by some greater power that has ultimate rule over what happens? We can only ever answer yes if we are to properly see things the way they are. Some things are out of our control and in the hands of the invisible forces of the universe. We used to call these forces gods. They had names like justice, war, death. We acknowledged our powerlessness towards them by offering up sacrifices on our own accord, and we praised them as good, even when they seemed to do bad things. Maybe it wasn't strictly true, but it was a useful practice because we really are powerless before death and should appreciate the universe rather than trying to gain control over it. If you were to be a father that loses your child in a war and you regularly sacrifice to Odin, the Allfather, god of war, there are several things happening. First, you personify the force of nature as a being that can be loving and good, rather than some unknown power that just happens. Second, you feel like you did all you could to prevent the accident, because you make sacrifices. This first thought makes the event seem plausible. Of course my son might have been carried off by an angel. That wouldn't be like him dying at all. The second act, the act of trying to prevent calamity by making sacrifices, this seems like denial, but it's the reverse. You're admitting to yourself every time that you make the sacrifice that the god might make your son die. In the end, it leads to a bit of angel-flavored denial, but it's denial with a purpose. The purpose was to let go of things that were never in our control to begin with. If we don't sacrifice our pay to God, then how can we truly say that we think it's out of our control? If we accept that the universe is in charge rather than us, we won't miss the money, because we know it was never ours in the first place. Part 32. Going to a diviner. You're going to get some real advice. Go get it. But remember that even if they tell you something bad is going to happen, that it isn't going to happen to you. Maybe they can tell you something bad will happen to your body, but that's not you. Maybe they can tell you something bad will happen to your property, but that isn't you. And don't get advice if it's going to stop you from doing your duty. Maybe they'll tell you that something bad will happen to you if you do what's right. But that shouldn't stop you from doing the right thing. Whatever kind of advice you get from the gods, or from your family, or from your country, don't let it interfere with your doing the right thing. Part 33. Politeness. If you want to be a gentleman, you can't pretend that I control your life. You have to acknowledge that you decide your own actions. That way, when I'm not around, you can still be a good person. That being said, here's some advice on how to act like a gentleman. The first mark of a gentleman is that he speaks little. That means not posting words on the internet either, even though people make sure that it feels easy to talk online. This rule goes double around strangers because you don't know what will excite them. When you have an appropriate time to talk to others, go ahead, but don't talk about people. Don't talk about CEOs or athletes or celebrities or fighters or races or family. This always brings up blame or comparison or praise, and these three subjects are inappropriate. Don't laugh too much if you can help it. You don't have to be a statue, but laughing more than politely at something can get you carried away, and being the guy who laughs at everything is not becoming of a gentleman. Along those lines, don't try to be the one who makes everybody laugh either. And being the person that's always talking about their past adventures just makes you look like an old fogey with a vacation slideshow. Maybe some people care about a few of your accomplishments, but you should realize that most of your stories aren't interesting to most people. Remember that when you're at a group entertainment, everything is geared towards making you a part of the group. Try to look for the things that bind you all together, and the things that exclude the people that aren't there. Decide before you go that you're going to go there, then come back to the real world without it affecting your sense of inner peace. And don't get too involved in the show, like the people you're with. Instead, make a point of being detached in case they get too caught up in things. Think of yourself like the emotional, sober driver. Avoid swearing when possible. There are some people that won't listen to anything you have to say, no matter how reasonable, if you swear. If you can't stop yourself from using socially inappropriate words, just do it as much as you can and act embarrassed when someone points it out to you. If you have anything that is useless except for show or delicacy, get rid of it. If you have useful things like food, drink, clothing, a house, or a family, then remember that they are useful things, not delicate, showy things, and treat them that way. Just because you're young is no excuse not to be a gentleman. Before you get married, you shouldn't sleep around like a common man because you're telling your future children that anyone could have been their parent. If you have to go ahead and taint your gentleman's soul like that, make sure you do so only if it is lawful and doesn't offend anyone close to the other party. Oh, and the first rule of Monogamy Club is, don't talk about Youth Monogamy Club. Everyone around you is in the moment. and can't think of themselves as anything but a virgin, so don't try to convince them otherwise, or else it'll seem like you're trying to convince yourself. When you hear that someone said something bad about you, have something like this prepared to say. What? Oh, is that all she said? Thank goodness, I thought some of the big stuff got out. And then resume your silence. If you make it clear that you don't care, eventually people will stop giving you pointless updates. Don't watch the news too often, because it's really not as important as you think it is. When you do happen to be involved in a news story, make sure that you don't make any negative comments or display any violent emotions. And afterwards, don't talk about your fame like it was anything special, or people will start reminding you that the news isn't as important as everyone thinks it is. If you're ever behind the scenes somehow, like at rehearsals or interviewing someone, the same rules apply. Don't act like you're depressed to be there. Just remember to keep your sense of gravity and sedateness. When you go to meet with someone influential and hard to reach, tell yourself first that they won't listen to what you have to say. That way, you'll only go if it's your duty to go, and you'll be able to deal with whatever happens, even if you don't like how it turns out. Do you have any philosophical heroes, like Socrates, or Marcus Aurelius, or Yeshua the Nazarene? Try to act like they would when you have to talk to someone in power. That way, you'll know what to do no matter what happens. Part 34. I want that. Sometimes you'll see something that you really want. You know that external thing will bring you happiness. Don't hurry towards it, but instead get some time to yourself and put 2 imaginary boxes on the table. Pick one up and look inside. It's a film reel. It's the pleasurable stretch of time, maybe an hour of happiness, or however long it takes you to get used to having it. Okay. Now we're picking up the other box. There's the stretch of time where you'll think back on the cost. That's heavy. Maybe the rest of your life. Weigh them against each other. Now, think of a more important box. More important time. The time where you'll be able to pat yourself on the back for not giving in. That might also last for the rest of your life. When you want something this hard, you have to think about it like a challenge in a video game. The harder you want it, the more experience you get for defeating that challenge. If you want something you shouldn't really hard, take this time and give yourself some experience points for not having it. You deserve happiness for your victory over a desire. Part 35. Nobody understands me. When you decide what the right thing to do is, the people around you might not agree. They might try to convince you to do otherwise. That's only because they don't know any better. If you give in to them, you're going to act against your own judgment of what the right thing to do is. So logically, you're doing the wrong thing. Are you afraid of the people around you thinking that you're different? If you act properly, no one can hurt you. So do the right thing according to you, no matter what. Part 36. Conduct at a feast. 1 and 1 is 2 to a mathematician. 1 and 1 might be 3 to a musician in tune. 1 and 1 might be 4 to a parent of twins. You might know math, music, and breeding, and you understand why the logical argument 1 and 1 is 2 might break down in certain settings. In the same way, you should remember that when you go to eat with somebody else, you're not just eating. You're also participating in a social interaction with the person that you've gone to meet. So don't look at the food there the same way that you would look at food on your own. Remember what your host expects of you as you are satisfying your appetite. Part 37. The meaning of character. It's hard to hear, don't quit your day job. But if you take on a role that you're not strong enough to support, you won't be good at it. So, in the end, by quitting your day job and trying to be in politics, you've made it so that there's one less good chef in the world and one more bad politician. That sounds like a net loss of 2 people to me. Part 38. Subtlety online. Your brain is extremely fragile to some actions outside of your control. If it gets hit by a fist, or a hammer, or a bullet, it can be hurt. If you were in a setting where hammers, fists, or bullets were around, you would choose to wear a helmet. Not only that, but you would carefully avoid some places, and maybe duck in others. The universe has things that harms your brain in other ways, though, things that can hurt the structure of your brain psychologically. You should remember to be careful in these places, and only take actions that are the least likely to get you hurt. Even clicking a link with your finger is an action. Part 39. You versus your body. Your body automatically adjusts to what your life is like, according to its internal structure. You always have the right body, as long as you are alive, because it is measuring out your life, like a manager who's buying you work boots and choosing the right fit for you. You might be convinced that your shoes should have anagrams, studs, or funny colored laces, but the important part for your manager is your foot, not the boot, because they have to spend as little as possible. It's the same with paying too much attention to your body. That attention might be better spent somewhere else. Part 40. Your daughters versus bimbos. When I went to school in a rich area, some of the girls had the life plan of marrying a rich guy. A young girl doesn't think she has any of the skills necessary to support herself. But when she hits puberty, all of a sudden, she has something that's worth a lot. The ability to give a man pleasure. She realizes how valuable that is when men flatter her, and it makes her proud to own such a valuable thing as her body. So she starts to try to be sexier, to make herself even more valuable. If she doesn't think her life is going anywhere else, this turns into a downward spiral that ends in an obsession with youth in her older years. Tell your daughters that beauty lasts only a few years and is only skin deep. But mostly, make sure that they're around men that make them feel rewarded for their modesty and their virtue. Lead by example by not pointing out females for their attractiveness any more than you would flatter your brother's body. Don't comment on women for their unappealing looks any more than you would disrespect your own mother. Part 41. Your sons versus jocks and man-babies. When I went to school in a rich area, some of the guys spent all of their free time on physical things. Whether they were thinking about eating and sugar constantly, or they were thinking about working out and protein constantly, they certainly didn't have time to concentrate on their philosophies. Eating and exercising should be done at regular intervals so that you don't have to think about them. Take a walk every morning, or do strength training every other day. Eat at regular times, or set a timer for yourself so that you can eat at regular intervals, and plan your meals at the beginning of your day. That way, you can be engaged by your real life, not by the things that are the preliminaries to having a real life. Part 42. The meaning of life. We all have duties that we have to fulfill. And sometimes that involves making another person feel bad. They won't appreciate that it's our duty, but we can explain ourselves to ourselves quite well. Whenever somebody else hurts you or says something bad about you, have it ready to say to yourself that they only do it because they believe it to be their duty. From their point of view, the person hurting you is actually doing the right thing, just like how from your point of view, they're doing the wrong thing. If that person's point of view is clouded, they might see something wrong. They might be mistaken about a concept. To your human brain, even an enemy human brain has a valid point of view, so it panics and it wants to defend your concept on the universe in the name of truth. But your rational self should paternally nudge your brain into remembering the truth of the universe doesn't depend on that person to agree with it, and it doesn't need me to defend it. In fact, that person will gain friction in life from having that false concept clouding their head. They are hurt for lying to themselves because they constantly have someone lying to them. You don't need to hurt them anymore. With this law of life in mind, you should be able to deal with someone who hates you, because you can embrace the old passive-aggressive line in your head, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Part 43. A cup with two handles. Imagine that you have a teacup with two handles. One is spiky and shocks you into dropping it before you can take a sip, and it was stuck there by someone else. The other is comfortable in your hand for sipping and was put there yourself. Wouldn't you avoid grabbing the cup by the spiky handle? Your brother did something awful to you. Are you going to grab on to the concept of your brother by that awful thing? Or are you going to remember that he is your brother and was brought up alongside you? Picking up his name with one handle will let you feel peace, and picking it up by the other will shock you out of it. So make the right choice whenever you can. Part 44. Their opinions. Sometimes people don't bother sticking any logic into their logical arguments. They might have a concept like, "I'm richer than you," tied logically to, "I'm better than you." They might think that if they're more charismatic, they're better than you. But the logical arguments would be more like this. "I'm richer than you, therefore my property is greater than yours." Or, "I have more charisma than you, therefore my style is greater than yours." But you aren't made of property or style. You're made of your life. Part 45. Your opinions. If you see that someone is fat, don't say that they're unhealthy. Just say that they're carrying extra weight. If anyone drinks what you consider to be a great quantity of alcohol, don't say that they drink too much. Just say that they drink a great quantity. Because, for all you know, that guy is suppressing a suicidal notion in the only way he knows how. Or grieving in a way supported by his culture. Or perhaps he just has a high tolerance for the long life of bad choices. Do you really know whether he's doing the right thing or not by buying another six-pack? If you do, then react to the appearance. If you don't know the whole truth of the matter, though, there's no reason to feel anything one way or another. Part 46. Fight Club Rules. The first rule of Philosophy Club is, don't talk about philosophy. Acting like a gentleman is one thing, but when you start to talk about life theorems and the mystical nature of the actions you take, you look like a prick. Real philosophers don't go on the internet to explain philosophy to teenagers on message boards. And if a real philosopher came upon a chat room where people were discussing heavy topics, they wouldn't post much. They would take the time to digest what was said by people with fresh points of view, and if somebody accused them of being an idiot, that philosopher would smile because they would know that they touched a nerve. The actions that you take based on your philosophy are important, not the philosophy itself. Concepts have to be digested and worked on before they can become actions, just like protein has to be digested and worked on before it can become muscle. Imagine that your friend is going to the gym and making a big show out of mixing up a protein powder so that everyone can see how healthy they're eating, rather than taking the time to drink it and work out so that it shows on their physique. That's what spouting theorems to the unlearned looks like. Part 47. Asceticism versus essentialism. An ascetic makes a choice to endure hardship by giving up things that make them comfortable. They might make themselves stronger against pain by seeking it out, or choose to fast. If I were to do that, I would find myself annoyed constantly by thoughts of how bad I had it. An essentialist thinks first of how the poorest in his country live, and how enduring and patient they are. If he chooses to put himself through some ascetic hardship to strengthen himself, he doesn't tell anyone about it, and he certainly doesn't feel spiritually ashamed if he fails. He pays a small price for necessary things, and is honest about it rather than ashamed of it, and is silent about it rather than proud. Part 48. An average person, a philosopher, and a true gentleman. An average person blames others when he is hurt. The mind fires off that something harmful has happened, and he believes it. A philosopher takes a step back and realizes that it's his brain's fault for whatever good or bad feelings he has. A true gentleman blames no one. They praise no one above another. They do not try to stop anyone from what they were doing, and they don't try to promote themselves as knowing the right thing to do. If they're told to stop what they're doing, they don't make a defense. A true gentleman seems to others to be a very fragile soul, because they acknowledge that they might die at any time, and so act like someone with only a few weeks to live, loath to fix anything that isn't truly broken, and using their energy gently. They stamp out all desires in themselves, and transfer their aversions only to things that hurt their faculty of choice. They don't care if they seem stupid, or unmoving, or ignorant, because they understand that they can't control what people think of them. A true gentleman that feels like they have no freedom looks internally for the source of that feeling. If they are praised by someone, they keep a calm exterior, but laugh at that petty, overly humble person on the inside. Truly, a gentleman treats not just the rest of the universe, but also himself as a current ally, but potential backstabber. Part 49. Quantum physics, dark energy, placebo, gravity, and other such science. The universe is huge, and you just can't explain everything. If you want to know everything about the universe, you could go on forever, looking at what scientists have to say about physics and space and all that. But you should want to take the right actions according to the way the universe works. So what should you do? Well, you could listen to people who explain science in plain terms, and follow any advice that they have that applies to your real life. That way you can test out their instructions in the real world and see if they work. But it isn't your job as an intelligent person to be one of those who explain science in plain terms, because they're paid lecturers and you aren't. Instead, if someone asks you your opinion about things like that, ask them how they feel about it. After they're done explaining their no doubt groundbreaking opinion, admit that you don't fully understand it, That's a little embarrassing on your part, but it seems really interesting, and you'll have to look into it further. Part 50. The difference between a gentlemanly character and an average character. You are your own master. You set laws for yourself and know when you break them. You have a sense of reason that can distinguish good actions from bad actions. You know exactly as much philosophy as you want to. You're a gentleman already. What are you waiting for before you reform yourself? You're an adult with a responsibility to yourself, not some little kid that does nothing but procrastinate until its parents tell it to stop. If you want to act like that, then you'll be a common person rather than a gentleman. You have to think of yourself as worthy of being a gentleman before you act like it. So tell yourself right now that you're good enough to be a rational human being. When you see pain or pleasure, or when you see glory or disgrace, remind yourself that you are worthy of being a rational human being no matter what. That if you give in just once, you're agreeing to lose that worth, that goodness, in exchange for something unreal. By defending yourself from it just once, you've taught yourself what a good person does. Maybe you're not your true vision of what a sage is yet, but you should at least act like you're working towards it. Part 51. A complaint from ancient times. Philosophy is built around maxims first, much like science is built around laws. A philosophical maxim might be, we should not follow the crowd. Philosophy also necessitates experiment, just like science, though. So there are demonstrations, like the Ash conformity study or the Genovese case. Then there's a third branch, where we seek to prove that the two are connected by means of standardized argument or essay, where we self-consciously try to prove how much we understand about the experiment. This third topic, essays and arguments, it only exists because of the second, demonstrations and experiments. And the second topic only exists because of the first, maxims and laws. We should retreat back to the first fundamental concepts when we're in a seeking mood, but instead we all spend our energy in the third phase. By not internalizing the core concepts first, you're nothing but a crooked children's storyteller that can recite morals without really believing in them. Part 52. Quotes to memorize. Recommended by the original Gentlemann. Conduct me, Jove, and you, O fate, wherever your decrees have fixed my station. Cleanthes. I follow cheerfully. If I did not, wicked and wretched, I must follow still. Whoever yields properly to fate is deemed wise among men and knows the laws of heaven. Euripides, fragment 965. And this third, from Plato. O Crito, if it thus pleases the gods, thus let it be. Anytus and Miletus may kill me indeed, but hurt me they cannot. Recommended by Will. We are constantly invited to be who we are. Henry David Thoreau. O God, give us the serenity to accept what cannot be changed, the courage to change what can be changed, and the wisdom to know the one from the other. Reinhold Niebuhr. And this third, from Carl Sagan. We are, each of us, largely responsible for what gets put into our brains, for what, as adults, we wind up caring for and knowing about, no longer at the mercy of the reptile brain. We can change ourselves. Here ends the Americanized Enchiridion. Epictetus, Arrian, Elizabeth Carter, Will Shower.